Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very exclusive interview with Informed with Anthony. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you so much for having me, Chingo.
Man, we follow you. We repost all your stuff. You have all the scoop, the exclusives. You get the info first. You get it early. Could you give everybody listening a little bit of background as to what are some other things? Because you worked in, what was it, Homeland Security or something?
So I was part of the U.S. Coast Guard, which is technically not part of the Department of Defense, but it's actually Department of Homeland Security. So I did that for a little bit over 10 years.
So you were a Coast Guard guy for over 10 years.
Yes, sir. And then a couple of those years I spent at the San Diego and Tijuana border as a Spanish interpreter. And our main focus there was basically anti-human trafficking and anti-drug trafficking into the country.
Man, so you're pretty well versed in like boots on the ground, kind of knowing the way this shit works, like how people get trafficked and drugs get moved and stuff. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So on top of that, I've worked, our units have worked with foreign Latin American countries, Mexico, been to Panama, as far south as Peru, to kind of work with their Coast Guard and their kind of like Department of Homeland Security to kind of help them as well, locate drug traffickers, smugglers, stuff like that, and kind of better train them as well to kind of combat the global crisis that is the human trafficking and drug trafficking.
So how did you get into, how would you describe yourself, man? Like a independent journalist, or in your role now that you're spreading info?
Yeah, I kind of leave the journalist title to the professionals. I know a lot of people kind of get a little bit triggered when I call myself a journalist because they actually put in the school time and stuff. I would just kind of say I'm more like a political commentator, which is, I basically grab stuff and I kind of add my own 2 cents to it. I grab something and I kind of try to go against the narrative, because if you want, leftist bias or a specific bias, you can just tune in anywhere. You can, if you want right-wing bias, you can you tune in more to like Fox News. If you want left-wing, you can tune into like CNN, MSNBC, Univision, Telemundo. But I kind of noticed that in the Spanish-speaking world, that there, for Latinos and Hispanics, there really isn't a lot of impartial news, meaning like they don't really have something that's not biased, or at least kind of independent or right of independent. And so that's basically what I do is I grab these main talking points that I hear a lot of woke Latinos and Hispanics talking about, and I'm like, nah, that's not it at all, fam. That's not the truth. Like that's your truth, and that's what you want it to mean, but that's realistically not what it is. So,
and not to get in your business, like, hey, how do you vote? But were you always up on game in terms of the woke left talking points? And did it come to a point when you're like, this is kind of starting to sound like bullshit? Because like for me, I'm new to really diving in and really sifting through and getting other sources. So for the longest, I was just busy working on my career and not really paying too much attention. But as of recent, I don't want to call myself, right or anything like that, but I try to be as impartial as I can. And so how did that happen with you?
Yeah, so I'm 33 years old. I left the military in 2017, and up until then, I didn't really care. I'm from Los Angeles, and out here, like, it wasn't like a big thing to be political.
Yeah.
Like obviously there's like social justice movements, but it wasn't necessarily like, like a political thing. Like, hey, once we're done marching, we're gonna go and sign up to vote. Like, nah, it wasn't really like that. It was just like social justice movements. You go out there, you hold up your signs, you scream a lot, and then you kind of get a little bit informed about what you're out there marching about. And then you just kind of go home and then, to the next one. So when I came back to California 2017, because I kind of moved around the country, my over 10 years of military experience, I noticed that LA was just full of like homeless people. And it wasn't, I don't know, maybe because when I left when I was 18, to enlist in the military, I didn't really pay attention to like my surroundings as much, because your mom's driving you everywhere when you're a minor and stuff. So you're not really paying attention. But when I came back, I got 3 kids. I'm looking around and I'm like, yo, has LA always been like this? Like, just like crackheads on the street, like openly doing drugs? And has there always just been a homeless problem? Like, I guess maybe it was just because it was normal, or I didn't have kids, or I didn't have to pay attention to it. I was like, I don't know if this is normal or what. So I didn't even vote 2016. And the only thing I really knew was what my family was echoing, that, you know, Donald Trump was a racist and Republicans are racist. And to me, I'll be honest with you, bro, I didn't really care for Trump or Hillary Clinton back in 2016.
Oh, same here, brother.
Yeah, I will say that I kind of had a little bit more bias toward Trump. Like, I actually was a little bit more in favor of him, only because I had military friends that actually worked with Hillary Clinton, and they were like, bro, she's like evil. She's like the devil, bro. Like, hey, we've met her, we've done security for her when, you know, when they were in the military, et cetera, et cetera. Like, she's evil. So I was just like, oh damn, like that kind of sucks, you know, but I don't really care, you know. So when I got out 2017, I started paying attention a little bit more to politics, because I think you can agree with this. It kind of like politics just took over everything, bro. Every, like, culture, corporations, like everything was political. Everything. You log into Snapchat, you log into Instagram, everything was like political.
Find out how you can help the AAPI community.
Yeah, like everything was political. And so I was just like, I need to pay more attention. Like, what's really going on? Like, is Donald Trump really this racist that's about to deport me? Like, people were telling me, oh, you're a son of an immigrant? Yeah, this was about to deport you too. And I'm just like, even though I was born here, and they were like, yep, it don't even matter. And I'm just like, damn, I really don't feel like being deported. So I started researching more. I started reading, and I was just like, you know what? Like, a lot of this stuff is a lie. And I'll never forget that this, like, right around the time where he said a comment about, you know, Mexico isn't sending their best. Some of them are, you know, rapists. Some of them are bad people, et cetera, et cetera. I remember watching like a 3 or 4 second clip, and I was like, damn, this dude is like racist. Yeah. But then, like, I was able to track down that video because I wanted to hear the context. I was like, well, let me hear what's happening here. And then when I heard the whole thing where he was like, no, some people are definitely great people. You know, some of the people that are coming are great people, but some of the people that are coming through, unfortunately, are bad people. And I was just like, well, I was DHS. I apprehended a lot of bad people, man, you know, running their background, finding out what they were there. And almost over 90% of the cases that we apprehended people, almost all the time, they were either cartel smugglers or they were just trying to pass drugs through. And so I was just like, well, he's technically not wrong. Yeah. You know, it's like, just the way lie? He's saying it. Right. It's just maybe the way he was saying it was kind of like the triggering factor for people. But I was just like, but he's not wrong, though, you know? And so to me, being in the military 10 plus years, my dad was military, my grandfather was military. I kind of come from that background. And then, you know, our culture, brother, you know, the Latinos and Hispanics will grab your biggest insecurity and turn it into your nickname, bro. You know, if you're fat, you're gordo for the rest of your life. It don't matter if you lose weight, you're just gordo from here on out. So to me, I was just like, I'm kind of weirded out by how spazzed out you guys are. Like, are you guys really triggered by this? Like, if he's speaking truth, then it's just truth. We do got to do something about the human trafficking aspect, especially me, my background being that, you know, anti-human trafficking, anti-drug trafficking. I was just like, I come from a long history. And I remember I served in the military all 8 years under Obama. We never heard from like woke activists to stop doing my job, or, you know, like, hey, stop following Obama's orders to deport people back or send them back. I was just like, this just kind of happened all of a sudden, you know? So that's when I started getting involved, man. I started researching more. I started doing like independent. I just kind of like, I would grab something and be like, yo, this is a spin the media is doing, but this is the actual truth. These are the numbers, the statistics. And then you guys can decide for yourself, hey, is this true or is this not true?
What year did you set up your Informed with Anthony pages? And like,
I set it up back in I believe it was like early 2018, because 2017 I was still like really dabbling in politics. I started following like both left wing and right wing like media outlets, and then I was starting to see like PragerU, Turning Point USA. They were kind of like growing a lot, and I started kind of hearing like both sides. And then 2018, I believe it was like January 2018. I'm like, all right, I want to create like an alias online, so that, because, you know, cancer culture was up and rampant too, and I was just like, well, hey man, I don't want to be crucified for saying the wrong thing. So I ended up coming up with my handle back in 2018. But initially, I was actually the conservative Latino, because I personally just consider myself conservative, which a lot of people falsely think that if you're conservative, that automatically means you're Republican. But it's not. Like, conservatism is a lifestyle. You know, like that's how I was brought up. I was brought up Christian. It was a very legalistic church. There was a lot of things you couldn't do because everything, you know, todo era del diablo. You know, they'd be like, oh, you want to go to the movie theater? Nah, eso es el diablo. You know, oh, you want to go to the theme park with your friends? Nah, eso es el diablo. So, I just grew up like very conservative, you know, like it was just a very strict household. And so I was just like, well, I definitely align more with conservative values. So I'm going to just call myself the conservative Latino. And I came out with like a little profile. And then recently, because of all the shadow banning and censorship and targeting of conservatives online, I changed it up to Inform with Anthony. And just like that, bro, it's like the censorship just went away, you know?
And then I noticed you even have like Informed with Anthony 2.0. Like you have to make backup pages and stuff.
Yeah, so I had my main page, Conservative Latino, and like right before the election, I'd say maybe like right around when the pandemic happened, that's when I noticed that I was getting censored pretty hard because obviously, you know, they were using like, oh man, you got to stay at home, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then I was listening to like other doctors that were coming out and they're like, actually, you know, like if you guys do this might actually help a little bit better. So I would post like those videos of those doctors saying like this, and then boom, like it'd be like, hey, your video was deleted, or, you know, oh, you're not allowed to post for like a week, et cetera, et cetera. So what ended up happening was my main page got heavily shadow banned for like months, where I was close to 70,000 followers on my Instagram. I had 20,000 on my Twitter. My Twitter got deleted completely.
They didn't give you a reason?
Nah, they didn't give me no reason, man, at all. They didn't say like it's because of this and the thing is with Twitter, I had never been locked out before. They never gave me like a warning before, like, hey man, if you don't stop talking about like this, then you're going to be banned. And I just remember like posting something, and then 2 hours later, like my email said, hey, your account has been completely banned. I tried to fight it, never got a response or anything. So that's when I had to create a backup page, at least on Instagram, because my main account, I had close to 70,000 followers and I was only getting like 100 likes. And I'm like, all right, there's something wrong here, you know? Like, and so I created my backup page. And then now when I changed the name again to my main page from Conservative Latino to Inform with Anthony, it's back again now. So I'm just like, all right, maybe they just don't really like the conservative Latino take.
Well, there goes my conservative Bling page. So much for that.
Yeah, man.
So
yeah, it's crazy, bro.
So let's dive into the border, because that's one of the main hot topics going on. I appreciate the invite, man. Anthony hit me up. I was telling producer Rob, Anthony hit me up. He said he had some contacts. We could probably get a ride along. And then the unofficial gag order came out, and the White House was like, nobody can talk to press. No one can get access. No one can do ride-alongs. Nothing. And we both happened to be back down there at the same time as originally scheduled. And I got an unofficial ride-along. How was your ride-along?
Yeah, I also got an unofficial ride along.
Okay.
I got like so much stuff like behind the scenes, and I was able to kind of be in contact with someone. But like you said, man, that gag order, you know, so much for being the most transparent administration ever. But it was really eye-opening, man, because my work for, you know, over a decade was out at sea. So I got to see a lot more drug smuggling and a lot of like cartel and, you know, people like that. Here on land, when people are crossing the border, that's a lot more families. That's a lot more women. That's a lot more kids just being dropped from the border. Yeah. Have you seen that video?
Yeah, the two kids just bloop, bloop.
Yeah, because, you know, and so it was definitely eye-opening. I got to actually interview a couple of the migrants themselves, and I put that up on my Spanish news podcast. And, you know, hearing their stories, hearing what they had to say, hearing that, you know, they feel a lot more welcome now and stuff like that. I didn't go out there with the purpose of like, aha, you know, like I knew it, like, oh, take that, you know, like this political party. It's not about that. It's just I wanted to see for myself because, you know, Chingo, it's one thing to hear about it, but then when you're there, you're like, damn, like these are, these people don't care about politics. They don't care Democrat, Republican. They're like, can I make money? Can I exploit the system? And can I get this person from point A to point B? And I think that what we are seeing, even with like the people that came and dropped off the 2 kids at the border and just dropped them off, those don't look like professional smugglers. I think that there's literally people saying to themselves, I need to travel up north to the border, not to get to the U.S., but to try to find a way to exploit money from these migrants, So I think that you're having like a lot of copycats where they're just like, I'm gonna grab a little raft and I'm gonna just transport people, and I don't have to be an official cartel member. I just want to make money, you know. And so it was definitely eye-opening, man. And I think that there's a lot of unofficial stuff. I don't know, how in depth your unofficial guy or girl, talk to you about. But with mine, they took me to a remote location where they're creating offsites. These are unofficial government sites where they're processing people coming into the U.S., but they have no real way to know if their identification is real or not. Because this is one of the bigger problems that people don't know about. And this is something that this official told me unofficially, was that here in the U.S., if you present an ID, there's a way to know if it's a real ID or not. But there's no system in the U.S. that allows you to know if this foreign passport or this foreign identification is real or not. So you just have to take it for face value. You just have to be like, yo, is this your ID? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, what's your name? And they're like, as long as it matches the ID, they're like, all right, I guess you're who you say you are. And then on these unofficial sites, what ends up happening is they're never processed into facilities. There's just so many of them coming over, so many of the people coming over, they just release them into the country. They put them on a bus, and then they're like, where do you want to go? And then they just drop them off on cities, and they're like, please promise us you're going to make a court date to hear your asylum case. And they're like, oh, yeah. Sure.
Thanks for the ride. Thanks for the ride.
Yeah, exactly, man. So,
and this is due to Biden doing away with the stay in Mexico agreement with Mexico.
To stay in Mexico and catch and release. Catch and release is back. So, Trump had gotten away with that. He's like, we're not doing catch and release anymore, where we just process them a little bit and then they promise us to come back and make a court date. That's back now. So that's why you're seeing these unofficial sites now that, they're never really recorded. The numbers aren't even recorded. So the numbers that are being presented are completely they're lowballed. So the numbers that we're hearing that there's a crisis about, I was talking to that official. He's like, I'd say at least multiply it by 1.5 to 2 times. Those are that's a more accurate representation of what's happening at the border.
It makes you wonder, like, con el Des Madre, like it is such a shit show where you see what these kids, unaccompanied minors, how, the images of the facilities in Donna, just the overall shit show of it. People getting raped, gang raped, all kind of crap, human trafficked, sex trafficked. And it makes you wonder, like, okay, did y'all just kind of mess up? Like, oh, we accidentally undid some shit. We came in with an executive order and we didn't know we were incentivizing people. We didn't know people were going to interpret Biden's speeches as, hey, come on, we got you. It makes you wonder, like, are you going to readjust? Did you do that on purpose? Like, what? I don't want to speculate, but it's like, it's such a big problem. Like, what do you think? What would you speculate? Like, they just fucked up?
I definitely think that this administration thought that they wouldn't have seen it. I don't think they really expected this many people to come through. And the problem is you can't reverse it because then now you're the bigot, right? Now you're a racist because you reverse what you said. And to me, what I kind of find interesting is the people that were so mad about the way whether people were being treated humanely or not at the border, now they don't care if they're being treated humanely because at least this administration is taking in a lot more families. So, it's almost like take everything you just talked about, the gang rapes, the sex trafficking, and this. That doesn't matter anymore to a certain demographic of people that were so outspoken last administration, because at least now the percentage of people being accepted is slightly higher. And so to me, it's just like, well, then you were never really mad about the condition at the border. You were just mad that the man was turning people away because a lot of them just either didn't qualify. And this is something that I think is a bad misrepresentation of what this administration is doing. Is they're making it seem like an overwhelming majority of these people are either going to be able to claim asylum or they're going to qualify for asylum status. A lot of people are not. I specifically spoke to a migrant family. It was like a woman and her sister, and then they had like 3 or 4 kids with them. And I asked them, like, what made you guys come north? And they said, well, we don't really like our local mayor. And I'm like, yo, join the club. I live in LA. Like, I hate my mayor. Unfortunately, not liking your government is not asylum status. You're not going to be able to apply for asylum status and then qualify because you don't like your government. Fleeing persecution, religious persecution, maybe sexual persecution because you're a member of the LGBT. Those are some of the ways that you're almost guaranteed to come into the U.S. But not liking your local government, not liking, the Democrat or Republican in that place, that's, it's just not going to be able to do it. So, again, he created this problem by reversing a lot of the previous administration's policies because they were too racist,
quote unquote.
And now he can't undo them because then it's going to look bad on him. So he's just stuck between a rock and a hard place right now.
It's almost like an example of woke politics and trying to be woke and trying to be like, we got to have transgenders in the military and we got to have this, we got to have, transgenders in the sports and we got to, open borders and everything's trying to be nice and hunky-dory and just everything is woke. And it's like, okay, well, due to being woke, you created this overwhelming situation where you're enriching the cartels. You're they're traveling for 4 months, 3 months, several months, going through multiple borders, crossing through countries. And it's a treacherous voyage. And it's like you incentivized, you got rid of the friction of the, hey, if you're going to pay a coyote, Trump had it to where you're going to be stuck in Mexico waiting for your court date, and then we can process you and bring you into the U.S. if you qualify. But you're not going to create a clusterfuck at our border, overwhelm our Border Patrol people, because, they say there's people on the terrorist watch list sneaking in, people from special interest countries like Yemen, Syria, etc. When I got my unofficial ride along, we were on a boat, and they were like, okay, we're going to go this way, not that way. And it's like, over here, you're probably going to see some rafts and people, getting across. Over there, we saw a body yesterday, and dude got chopped in half because he didn't pay, and there's no telling what else is going on that way. And they showed us pictures, like, look, he's still twitching. I was like, oh, hell no. Give me my floaties and my life vest. What do you think it's going to take for La Raza or Latinos to be like, you know what? Man, I used to look at things in this woke manner and I thought Biden was going to build back better, but apparently these issues, they're more nuanced. What do you think it's going to take for that tipping point?
I think that unfortunately with a lot of the individuals, on the left or La Raza, people that think that these feel-good policies, I know people call them like woke policies, but I kind of find it synonymous with feel-good policies where, for example, like you were talking about the repercussions of these woke policies, you defund the police and then crime skyrockets. And then now you have to refund the police. This is happening in Los Angeles. This happened in Minneapolis where they had these feel-good policies like, oh, this is what you guys want? Okay, cool. Yeah. We're with you. Just vote for us. We'll pass these laws. Cool. And then they defunded the police, crime skyrocketed, and now they're like begging the police, like, yo, please, like, we'll refund you. Just please take care of this crime, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that what's going to happen is unfortunately, some people need to see the violence. They need to see the videos that we are now watching that now are being pushed everywhere, right? Not just by people on the right, people like yourself and myself, where we're just independent, and then people on the left. They need to be able to see this. When I was down in Texas, I got to talk to a congressional candidate. She's running for Congress in Texas District 34. Her name is Mayra Flores. She gave me a full interview. I got that up on my YouTube. And she was telling me that she's spoken to a lot of Biden supporters, a lot of Hispanic and Latino Biden supporters, that they say we regret it. Like we 100% regret what we did because we didn't know it was going to be like this. We thought the process was going to be a lot more humane. where they were just going to be processed and either allowed in, or they're going to be processed and deported back. But what you're seeing is, like you said, you're seeing a rise in crime. I saw a video online where like there's cartel wars happening in border territory on Mexico's border because they want control. They're like, yo, business is booming. We're now taking over this territory. And the cartel is like, nah, you're not. And they're like, oh, you want to bet? And then they start drug wars. Back in January, the whole wristband stuff. Were you able to see like the wristband stuff at the color coding of the migrants, right? Mm-hmm. So that started because the cartel wars against the police and against other cartels, there was migrants coming through and they were getting killed. So they came up with the color coding system to tag, or, like cattle. The cartel would be like, yo, we got to tag you or else you're probably going to get killed because people don't know that you're a migrant. Mm-hmm. And so whenever there's wars going on out here, there was like a mass murdering of migrants back in January on Mexico's territory. And there was like 12 police officers that ended up getting arrested. I don't know if it was because they were corrupt or if it was just because of negligence, like, yo, better than to fight the cartel when there's migrants coming through. And they were like, well, we didn't know they were migrants. We just thought they were locals. Mm-hmm. Not that it makes it any better. But again, that's bad for business. Imagine news saying that migrants are being killed and you're a person that wanted to make that voyage. Mm-hmm. You need guarantees. So that wristband is a guarantee like, yo, don't worry about it. The cartel, the local cartel, even other cartel know that you're our property and they're not to touch you. There's a purple band that you make a one-time payment, $500, and that promises that no other cartel can extort you or do anything to you because you belong to that cartel. So it's almost like they're creating like a system of like, yo, if you pay this much, you get like the premium package. But if you get this much, we can't make any promises. It's like, this is like, what? Like, how is that okay with anybody?
It's like Disneyland. Like, you want to jump the line?
Yeah.
Purple band.
Yeah, exactly, man. And it's really sad because this is what I've always stood against, the trafficking of la raza, our people, right? And you feel bad because you know that some of these people, not all of them, really just want to make a living. They're just like, yo, we just want a better life. We just want to be able to give our kids a dream, but this is just not the way. And that is, to me, what the previous administration understood. And they're like, look, it's not that we don't love these people. It's just that journey is so dangerous that we want to do everything in our power to not allow it to happen. And the numbers were down. I mean, I talked to, official people down there. And I was like, look, man, I don't really care about your politics, but did the previous administration, the policies really work? Like, you don't have to lie to me. I'm on no one's side. I just want the truth. Yeah. And they're like, oh, they 100% work. We didn't have catch and release. We didn't have all these off-sites. We didn't have all this violence at the border. We didn't have people being dropped from the border 3 and 5 years old because there wasn't a policy that said that if you were a minor, that you're just going to be brought, we'll never turn you away. I mean, that's not just Biden's policy. This is his entire administration. Secretary of Press, Circleback Psaki, she's come out and she said, yo, we're never turning anyone away. That's what we're doing. So imagine being a parent hearing that, and you're just like, I'm just going to send my kids up north. I don't care how they make it. I'm just going to send them.
Pinche Des Madre.
Damn. Hey, dude, let me ask you this, Anthony. And before we get into like what we can do going forward, when you inform people on this topic and you're met with people that say, well, this has been going on for a long time, like we see a lot in the comments, or, it goes back to Reagan or even World War II. What points or what information do you try to present to those type of people that maybe not justify, but just lets them know or makes them aware of how things have changed since Reagan or even World War II when it comes to people coming from Mexico to the United States? Like, what do you find important to know, or what did you research and think that was very important to know, differences and how things were happening?
Well, yesterday, I think it was yesterday, the day before yesterday, was Cesar Chavez Day, right?
Right.
And I think that people, that goes back to a little bit after, World War II and stuff. And I think it's important, especially as Latinos, Hispanics, to understand the history of fighting illegal immigration because it creates a system. It's not about hating the person. And I don't necessarily agree with Cesar Chavez and calling them, people wets and wetbacks. I don't agree with the terminology personally. I know some people, they're like, no, call them what they are, illegal. This is not. I try to say like undocumented. I try to say, foreign migrants, stuff like that, because I have friends on the left and the right. Mm-hmm. And if they tell me like, yo, man, like, as long as you're not asking me to, change their like Z and Zer and their gender pronouns, I'm okay with that. Don't ask me to do that. But if you want me to use a little bit, undocumented, okay, I'll use undocumented. Like, that doesn't take a lot of effort on my part. If it keeps both sides engaged, But I think that definitely informing yourself historically on the harms of illegal immigration, the people that fought, including other Chicanos, other Chicanas, other Latinos that fought against illegal immigration, the UFW. Celebrating Dolores Huerta, people like Cesar Chavez, understanding why they also were against illegal immigration, and the farm workers that were already here saying like, look, we're getting undercut by the illegal population. And what ends up happening is you have systems built already by these corporations. It's something that's actually, I heard is already happening now, where they do hire the undocumented because they want to undercut them. To me personally, I've always said the undocumented community is modern day slavery today. They have no right to vote. They have no right to ask for a higher raise. If they get sick, or if they get, if something breaks while they're on the job, they don't have a union to represent them. They don't have medical expenses paid for. You're just simply replaced by another worker, and if you're ever like a problem, and that's been consistent. That's not new. That's not something that like, Anthony came up with this problem that exists now. Like, that's been the same message for 40 plus years, is that when you create this community, when you allow America to continue to exploit this community of people, it undercuts, it hurts, it harms, and especially the people trying to make this voyage over. And so to people, when they say, oh, this system has existed, right, but why would we allow it to increase? So the numbers were down. I personally believe, and I've made this statement before, where I personally believe that if you're really serious about tackling the border issue or the migration issue, you have to start with the root of the problem, and that is a lot of these foreign countries, especially the trifecta, which is El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. You have to start there with local government, getting rid of the corruption, and basically being in bed with the cartel. Can we force them to do that? Nah, you can't. So the only thing you can do is what you can control. And that's exactly what the previous administration understood. They understood, look, we can't go into Guatemala and get rid of the cartel. There's no way we can do that, unless we invade them and take over it, which is not going to happen. So the next best thing you can do is take care of your own country. And that's exactly what the previous administration was doing. You saw numbers decrease. I posted actually an article yesterday that talked about how in his first year in office, the previous administration cut human smuggling by 60%. 60%, 60. So that's a massive number. And, if people say like, yeah, but you know what, they're still traveling to Mexico, and the only thing that changes is that now they're just staying in Mexico. Not necessarily true, because what happens is if people know they're allowed to come over. So, for example, we talked about this earlier. Back in October of last year, the number of people that were allowed to come with a solid asylum case, it was less than 10%, meaning that the people that came to the border and remained in Mexico, over 90% of them either stayed in Mexico or had to go back to their country. And now today, more than 50% of families and children and migrants coming through are allowed. You don't have to have a valid asylum case. It's just the policies. They're like, well, it's not a solid case, but we're just going to take you in anyway. So as a person trying to make that voyage, would you come under an administration with a less than 10% chance of being able to stay in the country? Or would you come under the administration that's promised to take in children regardless of status or whatever it is? And you're watching that the statistic is now a lot higher. Like, I now have an over 50% chance to be granted asylum status or some kind of status to be able to stay in the U.S. I mean, it's a no-brainer. So although the previous administration, not perfect, it was definitely a lot better at combating human trafficking, drug trafficking, and allowing the exploitation and putting in place policies that drive people over. And so to me, you know what? It wasn't perfectly fixed. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a hell of a lot better than the Obama administration and now the Biden administration.
You mean the Harris administration?
Hey, right, if Biden-Harris. Yeah.
If we're speculating, because, you know, it's fun to do, right? What is the play here for this administration? Is it to pander to the future of votes? Is it to just make sure that they stay on the current voters' good side? What, in your opinion, is the play?
As far as Latinos and Hispanics, or just in general?
Well, I guess let's start with the Latinos for this administration.
Or people that like woke policies?
Yeah.
Well, I think that if people like woke policies, which to be honest, I don't think it's a lot of people. You're always going to have like the abolitionists, the freedom fighters. Especially I see it with like a lot of like the indigenous, like Mexicans, the people that hate colonizers, even Hispanic colonizers. You know, the Spanish descendants and all this stuff. I think that to them, seeing a complete abolition and complete erasure of our border is the goal for them. That's what they want to see. But
wow.
Fortunately, those people represent a very small minority of people, but they are the squeaky wheel. So I kind of be interested to see, you know, how persistent they remain and if this administration is really going to pay attention to what they have to say. But I'd say for the majority of the woke raza, I think that as long, and it's something that I kind of already talked about, as long as they see that the numbers of people being accepted is higher, I don't think they genuinely care about the border crisis. They don't really care about people being shoved into cages. I mean, take a look at George Lopez. This guy hasn't posted anything about kids in cages.
Well, he
posted a story.
He put some on his story yesterday. So I think he's priming. Yeah, I think he's priming us. I mean, I'm not a mind reader, but it might be a way to get off the hook. Where it's like, all right, motherfuckers, I put a little something on my story. Back the fuck up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had been calling him out. Almost every single time he posts, I have notifications on. And I post something like, yo, man, where's that same energy you had on the Pew shit? Like, look what's happening. Have you not seen the videos, this and that? And I think what he ended up doing is, because I used to get like hundreds of likes. And so it'd be like the top comment. So I know this fool's reading them. But I think what he ended up doing was muting my page. So I don't know if you've done this with people.
Oh, yeah.
You can mute a page. So like
restrict it.
Yeah, restrict. That's what it is. So only you and that person can see it. But eventually, if they're posting all the time, especially if they're trolling, which is not what I was doing. I was just asking them to be consistent. Then only you and that person can see it. Because I posted 2 more times and I get 0 engagement on it. Yeah. And I know that I have a lot of mutual followers, like people that follow him, follow me, and vice versa. And so I was just like, I think this fool just muted me. Like, and I'm just like, all right, well, whatever. That's what I get for calling him out. But I think that like the AOCs, the George Lopez, they'll maybe post once or twice to kind of digress people over. But even with AOC, like now her tune has changed. Now that it's her party in complete control, Senate, Congress, and the presidency, right? So before she would fly down there with her all white. She's like, yo, we need to get like matching uniforms, make it seem like all, it's all crazy down there and this is a crisis.
Yeah.
And she's doing her sob, and it turns out she wasn't even at a facility. She was like at a parking structure. But, optics is king in America right now, especially with politics. So don't throw like a little thing here and there to kind of recognize that it's still an ongoing problem. But what I notice is that they're saying like, well, if only we were to get rid of this, then the crisis wouldn't exist. So AOC, she's like, well, the whole border thing is a racist theory. We don't need to have a border. We don't need to have ICE. We need to get rid of that. That would help us. So it's almost like they grabbed the crisis, and it's no longer a humanity crisis. It's now a policy crisis where, well, if you guys really cared about these children, then you would help us abolish ICE, abolish these organizations. So it's almost like they now that they got your vote, now that they tricked you into voting that way, and the problem is still happening under them, it's always like, okay, well, now the goalpost has shifted. Well, sure, we're in power now, but we need your help to be able to pass this bill and your support to abolish ICE, and now we won't have these facilities to worry about. You can't have kids in cages if those cages no longer exist. We just need to let people come through. So it'll be kind of interesting to see, because that's what the progressives want. That's what the AOCs, the Bernie Sanders, no borders, none of that stuff. But the moderates, like Joe Biden, which I personally think he is a little bit more moderate, especially compared to like the AOCs of the Democratic Party, it'll be interesting to see how he continues to pander to that. I don't know if he'll just play Despacito again, or just a little bit louder maybe, or maybe like a remix version. I don't know.
I saw AOC called it. She said, "We are talking about the border crisis, but not in the terms that they want." She says, "It's an imperialism crisis. It's a climate crisis. It is a trade crisis." And I'm like, okay, I know a lot of people are probably buying it. I'm sure Latino Hollywood is like, okay, the script is in. We know what we got to say. All right, y'all, America Ferrera, Eva Longoria, y'all ready? We about to talk about this. And these are the talking points. We're going to blame it on climate. Trump stopped giving Nicaragua money for their climate issue. Therefore, there's earthquakes. Therefore, it's Trump's fault that they're here because he stopped sending money. Got it. We're going to send more money to Central America, restabilize them. I feel that what's going to happen is, with the important work that you're doing and other people, is the reframing this whole situation in the eyes of the raza. For example, earlier you mentioned that, you were describing how the realities of, for example, it's modern day slavery. These people don't have rights. They have no say. They're just driving down the wages for, maybe blacks and Latinos and maybe some whites and stuff here in America. And I think reframing it that way, like, wait a minute. For example, I'm Mr. They Can't Deport Us All. I dropped an album with that title. I had a whole campaign. I had a couple billboards, posters, all T-shirts, all kind of crap. So I kind of cut George Lopez and them a little bit of slack because not that long ago, I was part of the same ideology of feel-good policy of like, hey, stop being mean and stop deporting people. That's mean. ICE, ICE is a bad thing. That's mean. They're like cops and they're the Gestapo and they pull up and they snatch you away. But I feel like reframing it is going to help people look at it a little bit different because I definitely made the shift.
No, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And this is something that, I've talked to people on the right about. It's like, look, man, it's not that you're wrong. It's just the way you're saying it. Mm-hmm. It's like, you don't have to be so, you don't have to be like so bold about it. You know what I mean? Like we can change things little by little to kind of, like you said, reframe that conversation to be had. I don't know any political party that's not for legal migration. Right. Or I mean, whatever, however people want to label them. People that just don't want no immigration at all. Mm-hmm. That they're just like, well, we don't want to be taking in all these people. They bring problems, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, okay, so then let's create policies because you know what? I did meet a lot of raza that were coming through. These are in shambles. Like, we're just making this trek. Hopefully we can make some money and then we can go back. And so they're saying, like, we just want the opportunity to make a little bit of money, go back, because we love our country. Like, that's our culture. That's our country. That's where we're from. And so I think that if we can create ways to have a serious conversation on helping these countries, and that's why with the Biden administration, they have said that, come out the triangle, which is Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, and helping them out and saying, how can we stop making people flee your country and make your country a more prosperous one? Mm-hmm. And I think that will help both either like the far left or the left, and even like the people that don't want any immigration, because if you fix the root problem, you have happier people in their countries, you have thriving people in their countries, it makes for better foreign relations, you're not going to have the crisis coming up north as badly, and you actually get to fix the root of the problem. But unfortunately, that problem, which is a cartel and the drug state and the travel and the human trafficking state, that's a global network of people to include politicians. It's not just like some guy that didn't have a dad growing up and now he's involved in gang activity. No, it's organized crime. This includes banks. This includes politicians in every country, to include the U.S., I'm pretty sure, where you have Democrats and Republicans probably taking in some money because they're pushing, like, oh, no, like this is that. One of the things, even like the Libertarian Party of Texas, like, yo, we need to import as many immigrants as we can because, it's going to be good for economics and this is that. And I'm just like, wait, what? So definitely restructuring the conversation to be had. It's not about we don't want brown people. We don't want these stinky immigrants. We don't want people that don't speak our language. It's not about that. We can definitely tackle everything. Yo, you over here don't want any immigration? All right, cool. So then let's stop sending money overseas to countries for gender studies, and let's instead help like an impoverished country down south, maybe help them. Like, hey, let's build a school for them. Let's build they got an agricultural problem. Why don't we see if maybe we can help out there? Whether it's private security or funding a better Mexican military, whatever it is, let's help create that system.
I heard,
so go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off. I heard that Costa Rica doesn't have a whole bunch of people trying to leave Costa Rica to come to the U.S. because they focused on tourism. So they say that, for example, if you're going to be a waiter in Costa Rica, you probably speak 4 or 5 languages. Like, you damn near went to college for this shit, for the service industry. And Costa Rica focused on
hospitality,
preserving their nature, having it very clean. That's part of their culture, so that Americans want to go down there, see a bunch of green stuff and a lot of animals and good food and everything. And I think that's an example of, okay, let's not focus on certain natural resources. Maybe we'll focus on tourism, and that seems to be working on for Costa Rica. I saw some clips of the president of El Salvador, and he was talking about incentives, economics, how he was able to lower the amount of caravans leaving El Salvador. He's like, now you see them more from Honduras or Guatemala. He says, because we gave them a little bit more economic security, more like safety. So I guess maybe they got some fucking gangsta ass federales or something to deal with MS-13 or something. But I think it had a lot to do with the previous administration, where they found a way to be like, hey man, y'all got to take back some of these gangsters or we're going to stop sending y'all money. And they're like, you going to stop sending us money? Yeah. We'll take the MS-13. Come on, bring them back. Send them back.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Anthony. If you knew any insight on how that new president has been able to change things in such a short amount of time.
Well, I know that he just did like an interview with, I think, Tucker Carlson, right? And I think that was like the theme of like what they were talking about. I haven't seen it yet, but when I was down at the border, I was very surprised that, like you guys said, it's driven down immigration from El Salvador, because the overwhelming majority of the people that I talked to, and even just like hearing like where they're from and stuff, a lot of them were from El Salvador. Guatemala and Honduras, not from El Salvador.
Right. I
think I maybe met like one Salvadorian. I didn't meet any Mexicans, which is kind of like, again, I kind of got like a little bit of heat from this like a couple weeks ago, because Candace Owens, I don't know if you guys know who she is, but she's like, a big conservative speaking, person. And she said like, our borders are being overran by Mexicans. And I'm like, well, like that's where like the language I think matters a little bit, right? It's not that I want to be like politically correct. It's not that I want to be like woke politics, etc. But when you just like, you as a Republican figurehead, as this Trump supporter, just says our borders being overran by a bunch of Mexicans, it's like, ooh, like, well, first of all, the right is supposed to be all about facts. And the facts are that not everyone coming through the border are Mexicans. Yeah. And when you just generalize people like that, you're people on the right, they're not really going to care about specifics. I even had someone say like, why do you even care about specifics? You know what she means. I'm like, obviously I know what she means. But remember, we're not doing this for the people on our side. We're trying to engage people on that side. So if you start saying like, hey, the people were being overrun by Mexicans, like, well, hey, that's not true. Yeah. Actually, like 2018, I think became like the first year, if I'm not mistaken, like it became the first year that the people coming over, the majority of them were not Mexican people. It was actually the people from the 3 countries we just listed. And now because of El Salvador and this president, which to be honest, I don't know too much about him or his policies, but I will be doing a segment on him most likely shortly on my Spanish news to kind of see what kind of policies he instilled to drive down the caravans from El Salvador. But yeah, I mean, it's great. I think what he's doing, and I think that more conversation like that needs to be had in like, how can we help El Salvador? How can we help Guatemala? How can we help Honduras? And you know what? I'm the kind of person where I'm not going to let my political bias kind of just badmouth people. But if the Biden administration says they're going to do it, I'll be praying for him. I'll be praying for Vice President Harris that she is able to reach some kind of deal with these 3 countries where most people are migrating from, and be like, yo, how can we help?
And just pray that money doesn't get lost in the sauce with the corruption.
Right, exactly. And I think that was something that I think they did a really good job in pointing out, was that, Circle Back Saki, she basically said, one thing we're doing different is we're not going to be giving the money to the government. We're actually going to be giving it to private organizations that combat poverty, homelessness, joblessness, etc. And I'm just like, okay, that could possibly work. But I mean, when the cartel runs a state, man, it don't matter if you're a government or a private organization, they're probably going to get their cut no matter what, And so I just hope, the best for this administration. I hope that they're able to turn around, reverse something, and they got to forget that little minority woke mob, and they got to do what's best, that they know is best for, especially their children, man. Because, dude, that when I watched that video of the 2 little Ecuadorian girls just being thrown over like that, I was like, dang, and I just imagine, what parts they come and they drop children off and they're just never found. Those are 2 girls that got found because there just happened to be a camera there. But imagine in other sections where they're just dropping children off and they're like, yo, just walk as north as you can, just keep going, just follow this road or whatever. And they just get lost or scared, or I don't know what kind of wild animals live near the border in Texas, but I'm just like, dude, this is some scary stuff, man. And it needs to be reversed ASAP.
That's what you just described, the situation where there happened to be security measures. There happened to be a camera pointing on that section of the wall, which was able to document these 2 little girls getting just thrown over the wall, dropped over the wall. It's really an example of when people hear build the wall, when people hear border security, we got to close the border, tighten up the border. A lot of times young Latinos just hear hate, racism, bigotry, discrimination, this wall is racist and these are brown people, you're hurting with this wall. But if you cut all the funding for border security and now you no longer have drones or sensors or cameras and monitors and walls and fences, then you make the problem worse for these little girls that are crossing unaccompanied. Now there's nobody there to supervise, no one there to help, no one there to find them in case they're dehydrated. Or like you said, I think a coyote, a wild animal, would be the least of my concerns. Yeah. Because some of these people are ruthless. I saw some clips. I forget whose page it was, but it was a gentleman in Arizona near the border where he's literally like, yep, I talked to ranchers out here, people that own land. And he's like, look, there's a skull right there. He's like, they probably tried to rape her. She probably fought back and then they rocked her. They hit her with a rock. He's like, look at the blunt trauma on the side of the head. Damn. And the feel good woke policies of they can't deport us all and free the kids and abolish ICE. It all sounds cool, right? Abolish ICE, free the kids, can't deport us all, you can't catch all of us, do down with the wall, can't deport us all. And it's like, okay, well, you're promoting this rhetoric that's ultimately going to be worse for these people. And we're seeing it firsthand. You and I went down there and literally witnessed a crisis. Although the trolls like to leave messages like, oh, shut up, Chingo, it's been happening. Or you weren't this vocal when Trump was doing it. And this ain't nothing new. And yada, yada, yada. It's like, okay, you're not going to tell me there's not a situation. Call it a challenge. Call it what you want. But we literally talk to people firsthand and witnessed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what's crazy when you were saying oh, they can't deport us all, they can't this. What's really the end goal of this agenda? This is what I always ask myself. Is the purpose of this little mob or whatever to just import everybody? Would it to me personally, right? I'm Mexican descendant. My mom is a Mexican immigrant. Mm-hmm. To me personally, I would fight to make Mexico better. I would want to have a country you don't have to flee. I want a prosperous Mexico. When I was growing up, I'd spend summers in Mexico with my tios and my tias, go out to the ranchos. We weren't bothered. We lived my uncle had a ranch and a farm, And we live so free. You wanted to go buy fireworks, you can buy fireworks. You wanted to shoot guns, you can shoot guns. Like, it was just so free. And to me, like, when I was in Mexico, like, I'll be honest, like, I stood up with a tall chest. I always looked up and I greeted everybody because my mom would smack me in the head if I didn't greet everybody. Then I came back to LA and I see, like, all, you know, there's nothing wrong with it, but all this multiculturalism and people that don't look like me, that don't speak like me, I don't know who you are, I don't know this. And people don't tend to greet each other out here in LA. You know, everyone's so busy. It's a city life. You don't, you know, you get bullied a lot, et cetera, et cetera. But when I went to Mexico, I always felt like at home. I always felt like, damn, like, these are my people, you know, like, they all speak my language. They all speak Spanish. I don't have to worry about, like, offending anybody. I don't have to worry about, you know, if they're part of the woke mob or whatever it is. I just live freely out here. And I would always tell myself, man, when I'm old, I'm going to come and retire. I'm going to buy myself a nice little plot of land, et cetera, like, so going back to the question is, like, what's the end goal? Is to just always leave Central America in the shambles it is and just import as many people as we can for cheap labor? Like, I would feel that we could all get on board with asking whatever administration to be like, yo, can we just help, like, our countries to the south? We see this problem. Like, we don't need gender studies in Pakistan. We don't need, you know, LGBT studies in Saudi. Like, we don't need any of that. The money, I think, should be focused. And I'm telling you, man, people on the left and the right will agree. Even the people that are just like, oh, we don't want any immigration. I'm like, all right, great. So then you're on board with this policy to help make these countries a little bit better by sending money we already use, but that we send to gender studies all the way to the Middle East, which, I mean, it's a culture thing out there, right? They're not going to be accepting of gender studies out there, no matter how much money you want to throw at the government. And so that's why I think that's my biggest issue with the woke raza, this and that, where it's like, oh, abolish the borders, abolish this. But I'm just like, but so then what's the end goal, though? Like, what do you wish to see? Just people, regardless of criminal history, criminal activity,
terror watch list,
anybody, terror watch list,
fentanyl.
Yeah, like, you're okay with just like the constant flowing of these people through borders? Or, like, wouldn't you rather make these places a lot more prosperous so that we never even have to leave, so that people can just feel pride and feel a sense of, like, hey, man, like, we're up here up north working with administrations, working with politicians to finally put an end to the exploitation of our people, the drug trafficking, the killing. And now look at Guatemala. It's a prosperous nation because of how hard we fought up here. And then eventually it's like, you're not even really going to care about a border or not, because it's like, well, we have a prosperous nation. We don't need to travel up north for jobs anymore and worry about if we're going to be trafficked or not, or if we're going to be sold into sex slavery or not, because we got jobs and no one's threatening us.
What do you say to the people that are, I don't know if political purist might be the word, that might say, well, so much of this land was Mexico at one point. This is, you know, Mexicans' land, and so on and so forth. Do you still get that a lot? And do you have, like, something to combat that, or to, how do you meet that kind of resistance?
I definitely get that a lot, you know, like the whole no one's illegal on stolen land, right. Stuff like that and stuff like that. But you know what? Here's the thing is, no matter how much you shout that, realistically, no side is going to be like, all right, well, here's your land back.
Right.
Know? Like, it's just not going to happen. We live in 2021. We have nations. We have borders. It's just not going to happen realistically. So to me, I tell those people, like, yo, you got to wake up. You got to live in the now. You got to live in reality. I understand that there were genocides. I understand that there was slaughtering. And I don't think that there's a people on earth that can say, like, well, we never did any of that. We never slaughtered. We never took over territory. I mean, even when the Americas were just indigenous, that's how villages grew, by killing even their own people. I mean, you can be the most ethno-state nationalist Maya tribe or Aztec tribe, and you still killed, like, another village, like, right down the street, because you're like, yo, I want that land because they're closer to the river or whatever it might be, you know? And you're just like, yo, like, we're taking over. And so those things have always existed. And I think that you need to bring solutions using today's methods, because if you're just out there saying, like, well, this is all stolen property, this is that, I'm like, okay, well, what is your realistic plan through policy and diplomacy, not killing people or committing another genocide, what is your diplomatic way of solving it? And they're just like, well, and they'll just be like, well, we just want it back. And I'm like, but what are you going to do with it? Like, let's say, for example, California. Let's say the government was like, all right, all the indigenous people, all the people that are fighting for abolition, all this stuff, California is yours. We're taking out all federal funding, all state funding. Y'all need to fish. Y'all need to do everything for yourself. No more COVID-19 vaccination passports. No more hospitals. Just you're on your own. You need to build your own hospitals. You need to do your own thing. I guarantee you, within a month, these people will be like, yo, please, like, please.
We didn't mean what we said. We didn't mean it.
Yeah. We didn't really mean it, But that's one thing I noticed is that they want their world to live in, but they want it funded by the people. They want it funded via taxes using the same modern system. They want to be protected by these systems. They just don't want, and that's ultimately what it is. They want to live unchecked. They don't want any discipline. They want an open and free society. I've literally talked to abolitionists. And
what do you mean by abolitionists in a 2021 term?
So abolitionists, if I remember the term correctly, is you don't believe in any kind of incarceration. So I would ask them, so what would happen to like the prisons? They believe like no one should go to prison because it's modern day slavery. Like, nobody should go to prison. I'm like, so I tell them, so well, then what would happen to a murderer? And they're like, that's not, I don't have a solution for that. We just don't believe in the prison system. Nobody should be in prison. And I'm like, well, so then what would happen to like a rapist? So like, that's up to the town to decide how they want to deal with it. But that's not for the state or the federal government to come in and say, this person will serve this amount of time because, we don't believe in the prison system. And so I'm like, so you just want your version of things to exist, but you don't care about the repercussions and you have no solutions. And they're like, basically. And I'm like,
wow.
Whoa, bro. Like, you're just telling me you're an ignorant person and you're okay with that. You just openly said that.
Might be a little bit of mental illness in there as well.
Or were they, maybe they're young. Maybe they're
definitely young.
They're young and
or old and dumb.
And don't understand. And don't think it all the way through, the way Anthony says, repercussions and, what's the long term? What is this going to look like if, okay, hypothetically, you want to get rid of jails. And like he said, what if there's a fucking serial rapist? What do you do? Well, that's up for the town to decide. Nah, me puras mamadas.
And you know what? If you left it up to the town, I almost feel like the town would be a lot more harsher.
Yeah, 100%. That's why you need due process. That's why due process is so important. We're seeing that play out with the Chauvin case. I don't know if you have any opinions on how that's going to go, but I think we could agree, I think, at least personally, that he's going to get off. He's going to get acquitted.
And I'm looking at the evidence and stuff. I'm looking, they released body cam footage. I think what they're doing is they're building up a case around the situation, right? They're like, oh, well, Derek was scared because there were so many people there. He wasn't in full control. Well, look, now we got camera footage of George Floyd inside and look, he was high as hell and this and that. Oh, and then the girlfriend just admitted that they used to do drugs all the time and that he was previously in the hospital. And he had like complications breathing because he was just so high all the time. And so I think that they're building a case around the situation so people will be like, all right, this wasn't like an innocent person per se. Mm-hmm. And I agree. I'm going to be out there the day of the verdict, covering what I believe is definitely going to be riots. Because it's just coming to the point where it almost doesn't matter what the verdict is. The verdict can be like, all right, he's going to jail for 3 years for negligence and he's never going to be a police officer. They're like, 3 years? Hell no, we burning the whole system down. Yeah. Or it could be like, all right, he's getting 5 years with possibility of parole. Possibility of parole? Hell no, like we would have just burned the whole system down. And I think that even life would be too good for these people. They'd be like, oh, so we can feed him 3 times a day, and he's gonna get free healthcare off of taxpayers? Hell no, we burning the whole system down. And so I'm just like, I think it's getting to the point where there's no justice suffice for situations like what happened in George Floyd. I don't think there's any more like, I'm sure there is, and we're not seeing them because especially on social media, Chingo, that you kind of get like the extremists on there. Like the comments are not moderate anymore. It's not like, oh man, yeah, you know what, you were right.
You're right. It's nuanced. I get it. It's nuanced.
Not never.
Yeah. And I think that you always get the people like, yeah, Chingo, you 100% right, bro. Get them, teach these fools. Yeah. And then you get like the far, whatever other side, and they'll be like, oh, you sell out, you cop out, like you're just doing this to bootlick the white people, like you think that you're a friend, and this is that. I'm just like, bro, I'm just literally posting statistics and facts. Yeah. And you getting like you can literally put the autopsy report of George Floyd and be like, oh, so you just trying to make
so you on the white man's side.
Right, yeah. Exactly, man. And I'm just like, yo, man, I'm straight up legit I just showed you the autopsy report so that you can see it. But because it goes against your narrative that George Floyd was like this saint, and that he was going to like ministry school to teach kids in Africa, about God. Like, no. Like, that wasn't the case. Let's be real here. And, I believe that George Floyd was the same person, like putting a gun to pregnant woman's belly. You know what I mean? Right. Like, this is the same dude. So I'm just like, look, I'm not trying to justify anything. But I'm just saying, something led up to that point, and people need to know what led up to that point. And I think that justice needs to be served for sure. But I personally, looking at everything, following with the trial, I think like you, man, I think that he's probably going to get off. Maybe not in the way of like, he's just going to get up and walk, but he'll probably get like, me personally, I think that he'll probably get like maybe a year or two, or maybe like a minimized sentence. You know what I mean? Like enough to kind of maybe calm the flames. But at that point, it's like, it's woke justice. Like I was talking to my mom about it, and she's like, I think they're going to give him prison, but not because he deserves it, but because they know that the mob is going to just destroy America if they don't do it. And so now we're entering not just woke politics, but woke justice. Yeah. Where you have these people like, yo, if we don't do something, I mean, it's going to go down.
Yeah. The crazy thing is that the media is going to profit from the riots.
Insanely.
They're going to make so much money, both Fox News and CNN. Fox News is going to be like, look at what they're doing to our country. This is what we voted against. And look at this woke crap. And this is injustice. And then CNN is going to be like, you see, this is what we got to do. And, who said protest has to be peaceful? And they're going to profit from the rioting. They're going to get so much clickbait. They're going to sell
and the division.
Yeah, the division gets worse. They benefit. It's almost like they want somebody to die so that they can keep making money. And I think it was Van Jones from CNN that said, instead of him coming out saying, hey guys, start preparing yourself mentally, because lots of evidence and different things will be presented in this case. Start getting your mind ready for it may not be a life sentence or a death penalty for this cop. Instead of setting people up that way, instead he's like, well, don't be surprised if this is just another it's open season on the black man, and this is just another example of police brutality, and just putting out this rhetoric of almost saying like, yes, your violence and rioting and city burning will be justified because it just further whatever.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when you mentioned like Fox News and CNN profiting, like every single time I think about people like, well, I'm loyal to CNN, or I'm loyal to Fox News, or, oh, Fox News is this, I literally just imagine, like the talking heads going on there, spewing the propaganda, their woke activist journalism, and then like the owners of CNN and Fox News like sitting smoking cigars somewhere with the whiskey and like shaking hands and like, oh yeah, we're gonna create more riots, like hell yeah, and I'm just like, people need to realize that, people need to realize like it's not about the left versus right, it's about controlling, it's about propaganda, it's about headlines, clickbait, it's about, like you said, man, like, oh, one side is going to be like, oh, look, creating this narrative of like, oh, you see, this is why we can't, blah, 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 and we got to back the blue and this is that. And the other side is like, nah, abolish the whole system, burn it down. And I mean, even like activists like Sean King, the white black guy, right? So him, like he's already posting like, yo, we're gonna burn it down, like sharing links, like with opinion pieces, like, oh, the system's gonna fail us, this and that. You're already preparing people mentally, like, yo, we gotta burn it down if it doesn't go our way. And I'm just like, dang, bro. Yeah. Like that's just the way. That's how politics are, man. That's how politics are today, and it's sad.
Since we're talking about race, maybe it's a good time to segue into what your opinion is on how the voting legislation is kind of changing around the country right now. Like with Texas passing like certain, voter ID and early voting restrictions and limiting drop boxes and just
the drive-through voting.
All that, and how people are all spinning it into how racist it is. It's so difficult to vote. They're making it impossible. It's the worst system, the worst approach to it in decades. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think that requiring people to get like a passport for vaccines and not requiring people to have an ID. I mean, it's almost like, so we're smart enough to be able to get a whole passport, bro, like with a picture or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Have to get online, find where to get one, or go to your doctor, set up an appointment, find a vaccination site, et cetera, et cetera. But you're talking about a state ID, being issued and you're like, well, that's too racist, but this one's perfectly fine. I think that what we're seeing, brother, is that we're going to have hyperpolarization in states. We're going to see blue states go further left, and we're going to see red states go further right. And, we have Georgia, we have Texas, that they're passing these bills, protecting voter rights. Like, there were definitely some irregularities this last election. We want to make sure that we have safe and honest elections. Only criminals would be against something like that. Only people that are manipulated. People like, who doesn't want, like, this is a very important decision, bro. This person is going to run the country for the next 4 years. I want to make sure that this person was the person that was correctly voted for. Like that's all it comes down to. I just want an honest election, because otherwise, if you don't have a safe and honest election, what's the point of kind of like voting, bro? If your basic right of being able to vote is not protected, it's not being made sure that it counts correctly, then it almost kind of like cheats you out. And you're like, well, is my voice even being heard? Like, what's the point of democracy if people are just going to cheat, or they're not making sure that things are in motion to ensure a safe election, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that what we're going to see, especially with going back to the COVID-19 passports, you have some states saying like, oh yeah, like we need to help Biden so that we can go ahead and make sure this happens, et cetera, et cetera. Then you got like Governor DeSantis in Florida. He's like, hell no, like we are never going to do vaccination passports. That is unlawful. It's disgusting that the government thinks that it's okay for you. So I think what it's going to do, it's literally going to create like sanctuary states. So if you're like very Democrat, you're probably going to want to head over to like California, Portland, Oregon,
New York,
Washington. Yeah, New York, exactly. But then if you're kind of like, you don't even have to be like far right or a conspiracy theorist. You're just like a moderate that's like, this side's kind of way too crazy. I think I'm going to go over here to the free state where I'm able to just make the decision I'm upon myself. And I think that that's kind of like the future that we're looking at least with this administration, where there's going to be governors that are like, we don't recognize the federal government. We're just going to do our own thing. And I was actually just talking about this with a friend where I'm like, imagine it gets to the point where the federal government's like, you will enact these vaccinations, or we're sending in people to protect these blue counties. And what I mean by that, so every state has like a blue county. So Miami, it's Democratic. So let's say there's Democrats and the Democratic mayor in Miami that's asking Joe Biden for help because, hey, our governor doesn't recognize you, but we need help. We feel unsafe in our own state under this governor. So Joe Biden, and of course it's going to be the boiling frog effect. It's not just going to be like, we're sending in troops right now with tanks and this is not. It'll probably be like, we're going to send in like 50 National Guard to send in and just kind of like enforce the vaccinations because the mayor is asking for it. This is what the mayor wants. And the mayor, of course, will chalk it up as safety precautions. And we just want to make sure everyone's safe. And this is what the city wants. They want passports. So we're just going to make sure. So I think that that's possibly something that could happen. And imagine what we are having. I mean, we already see it in D.C. It's not that far-fetched of an idea where we have D.C. where it's like literally a fortified fortress right now with National Guardsmen. Like, people don't understand that. There's National Guard protecting Congress right now from white supremacist extremists, right? Whatever they want to call, whatever they want to make the excuse for. But it's not that far-fetched to think that eventually we're going to have like sanctuary states where if you are a blue person in a red state, you're going to feel unsafe. You're going to be out there with your 10 masks and your shields and your gloves like, yo, I don't feel safe. I need to get the hell out of here. And if the federal government isn't going to help with sending in National Guard troops or whatever, I just need to get up and move. And then the same thing is going to happen with people that, vote Republican or a little bit more conservative. Or like I said, not everyone that is against forced vaccinations or against passports are these extremists. But it's the left that controls the narrative. So if they come out and they say, like AOC, right? They're like, if you use the word surge, you're a white supremacist. So what happens if you're a leftist journalist or just a moderate journalist that doesn't want to be, oh, shoot, I don't want to use the word purge anymore because AOC just created the narrative that if you use the word surge, even though that's exactly what's happening at the border, I'm going to be labeled a white supremacist. That's why they continue to use the white supremacists. Everything that the left doesn't like is white supremacy. And what's the last thing any Latino or Hispanic wants to be? A white supremacist. Mm-hmm. So they're just going to continue to create this thing manipulate. Like, oh, you're against vaccines? You're a white supremacist.
Oh, you voted for Trump. You voted for Trump, white supremacist. You voted Republican, white supremacist.
Everything is just, if you're not of my mentality, if you don't want to live your lifestyle the way I live my lifestyle, it's either rooted or embedded, or you just straight up are a white supremacist.
You're morally white.
People are not, and you're not okay with that. This has nothing to do with left versus right. It's just that's the way they think. That's the way they're promoting everything. And like you said, Chingo, there is no crisis at the border right now. You're a white supremacist for even making such an assumption, brother.
Right?
How dare you, Chingo?
The cool thing about the free state of Texas is that we were once our own republic, and we will secede from this bitch. If these motherfuckers, it's crazy that in the year 2021, we're having to use terms like free state, like coming at you live from the free state. It's amazing. And I don't know if that language has clicked in the mind of the raza, where it's like, wait a minute, we're talking about fixing the issues of Central America, but like in California, the homelessness is getting out of hand. How we're able to take care of our veterans. There's a lot of people hurting stateside. So interesting times. Hey man, we appreciate your time. Mm-hmm. Great having a talk with you. Dude, I was so tired from my show that we didn't get to hang out, but I really wanted to because I know y'all had a good time. Yeah, afterwards, they're like, hey man, we're hanging out tonight. I'm 41, dude. I'm like, I just did a show. I got to eat these crab legs. But hey, man, keep us posted. Everybody follow Anthony at InformedWithAnthony, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you say you're going to be out there in Minneapolis to get front row seat to the riots?
Yeah, man. So I've been covering the riots since, honestly, George Floyd. I'm going out to LA. I've gone out to Portland, Oregon, caught them like burning Bibles and stuff, which to me, it should be like, send a red flag to every Christian, Catholic, Hispanic, Latino that these fools are literally burning our Bibles. Like they just don't accept our colonization and our colonists, Jesus. But anyway, I'll be out there. And then I'm also planning a trip to TJ, where they have like the large encampments of people still waiting there from the Remain in Mexico policies. And now they're creating more tent cities because they're just kind of waiting for the Biden admin to just kind of wave them through. So I'll be doing that trip, and then the Minneapolis one probably the end of this month.
Well, we'll be following you. Hopefully we'll be able to link up again in the future. But everybody follow at InformedWithAnthony. Straight facts. Let's keep reframing things, and I think soon we'll hit a tipping point.
For sure.
So thank you for what you do, man. We really commend you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
For sure. Thank you.
See you, brother.
All right, later.